Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome at the 43rd edition of the Book of the Month. Today, our book of the month is Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. We will be talking about this book with a few of the main characters, the writer and Francesca Aloisi. So the story takes place in Enniscorthy in the early 1950s in the southeast of Ireland. So, Eilish is one among the many of her generation who cannot find work at home. Finally, she's offered a job working for the awful Miss Kelly in her grocery store, but she's capable of doing so much better. Her older sister Rose finds a job for her via Father Flood, an immigrated Irish priest who's living in Brooklyn. She leaves her family and her friends for a new life in America and heads for unfamiliar Brooklyn and to a crowded boarding house with an over-scrutinous landlady and some very bitchy fellow residents. She suffers from homesickness and is very uncomfortable in this new country. Little by little, however, she starts forgetting her homesickness thanks to the pattern her new life has taken. In the morning, she's in Bartocci's department store, and in the night, she goes to night classes in Brooklyn College to learn a bit about bookkeeping and on the parish dance floor. One day, an Italian-American asks her to dance with him, and then he walks her home. He is unlike anybody she's ever met in Ireland, and he is utterly devoted to her. Any time he can, he spends with her. She starts to feel at home at Brooklyn, and most importantly, she starts to fall in love. She meets his particular family, and he takes her to Coney Island. He even takes her to baseball matches. But then terrible news comes. Eilish's sister Rose has died very suddenly, and her mother is left alone. Reluctantly, she agrees to marry Tony before she leaves, and then goes back to Ireland, where she finds that things have changed. She is offered a job in a bookkeeping house, and Jim Farrell, the son of the pub owner, starts falling in love with her. She feels that things are not going exactly as planned. She also starts rediscovering Ireland and realising how much she loved it. When Jim Farrell proposes to her, she's faced with the dilemma. Eilish, I was wondering if you could tell us why the decision you have to take is so difficult. Yes, you're right, it's a very hard decision to take, for many reasons. The first reason is that on one side Tony represents America, liberty, new decisions, a new life, a new way of life, and on the other side, Jim Farrell represents Ireland, certainty, a future that in a way is already written for me. So I'm going to have to make some sacrifices. For Jim Farrell, for example, I have to sacrifice everything I've built up in Brooklyn. And for Tony, I'll have to sacrifice my life in Ireland. There are two passages that really reveal how I feel about these two men. One passage is when I'm talking with Miss Fortini and she asks me, so what's the worst thing about him? And I answer, oh, I wish he were 2 inches taller. And she said, oh, is there anything else? And I answer, no, nothing else. And it shows how much I love him and how much he's rather perfect, and the only thing that's imperfect about him is he's not tall enough, but he's such a nice person and always full of energy. And another passage is a bit sadder. It's when I'm with Jim Farrell and I start to kiss him after the wedding of my friend, and I'm already married with Tony, so that's very immoral. But just these two passages to show at what point the dilemma's big. The decision's not an easy one to make. I make it at the end of the book, so if you want to know the decision I made, read the book. Hello Tony, I was wondering what positive characteristics do you possess, and how do those characteristics help to make the story go forward? Hi, it's lovely to be with you. So here are a few of the traits of my character. So I'm a kind person. I'm full of energy and I'm in love with Eilish. I have projects, and I'm an engine to the couple, which is quite a nice function. So I'm going to give you examples for every single of these traits of character, which help the story go forward, and of course, which kind of make the story because Eilish is in love with me. So for the fact that I'm kind, I'd like to give the example that I took her to Coney Island in the summer. On Sunday morning, when Tony collected her, he appeared surprised by the sunglasses. "I'll have to tie a rope around you," he said. "All the guys at the beach will want to run away with you." So it's like a little jokey thing I say when I see her going out and she's looking very glamorous with her sunglasses. And of course it's loads of fun. So that's my example for being kind. For the fact that I'm an engine to the couple, so I like to give the example of my proposing to her before she leaves. "Marry me before you go back," he said, almost under his breath. "What did you say?" She went to the stoop and sat beside him. "If you go, you won't come back." "I'm just going for a month, I told you." "Marry me before you go back." "You don't trust me to come back." So this is a discussion I have with Eilish, and it's quite a smart conversation because I can kind of foresee that Eilish might not come back, and that when she goes to Ireland she might kind of see that it's a hard decision to make, and maybe if the right decision is going back to Brooklyn, it's not going to be easy. And then Eilish asks, would a promise not be the same? And I say, if you can promise, then you can easily do this. And of course, people make 20,000 promises a day, and out of these 20,000 promises, they kind of do 5 things. And it goes back to this Latin say, verba volant, scripsi manent. What people say kind of flies off, and what stays written is actually what happens. So I'd like to that's why I want our marriage to be official. And now I'd like to give an example about the fact that I've got loads of projects. So basically, I am full of imagination. I'm a plumber, but I'd like to kind of have my own little company. And I tell Eilish that I'd like to build a house for us on Long Island. So basically, I got a little brother, Francesco, and he says, and he's kind of being bullied by the older brothers. I mean, in a kind of brotherly way, of course. "When we're all in Long Island," he said, "and when you have your house there, will you make them build me a room so I can come and stay with you when they're all making me miserable?" So that's quite a funny thing because he's the smallest one, and that's kind of showing that we've got a project, and that if Eilish comes back, we can live together in this house, and we can kind of make our qualities as plumbers, carpenters, painters, kind of into a company, which would be brilliant. Thank you very much. And now let's meet Colm Tóibín. He's going to tell us a bit about how the idea to write Brooklyn came to him, and especially a bit about himself. You'll see that Colm Tóibín and Brooklyn are very, very tightly tied. Hello, thank you. It's an honour for me to be with you today, and I'm so glad that Brooklyn won the Book of the Month. So Brooklyn also won the Costa Award in 2011. I was very proud about that. And I am the author of Nora Webster, The Master, and A Guest at the Feast. So yes, Brooklyn and I have a lot in common, starting with the fact that I'm born in Enniscorthy, the same place where Eilish is born, in the 1950s, in fact 1955. When I was small, I had lots of difficulties at school, I had problems speaking, I stuttered, and when I was 11, my father died. That was a very hard period for me, and after that, what I did is I wrote every single day. I wrote poems, I wrote short stories, and my family didn't really know what to make about it. Finally, I went to the University College of Dublin because I'm Irish, and after that I travelled in Africa, and I went to Spain, to Barcelona, where I wrote a few books, and then I went to South America. And in South America I got the idea to write Brooklyn because I was so homesick. And so as soon as I came back to Ireland, I started writing Brooklyn. I'm also quite acclaimed for my sense of humour in my books, which is usually condensed in historical backgrounds. And to finish, I'd like to read a little commentary I've had for my book Brooklyn by Independent on Sunday. It is impossible to read Tobin without being moved, touched, and finally changed. Thank you very much, Mr. Tobin, for coming. And now we'd like to interview Francesca Aloisi, our Reader of the Month, and ask her a bit what her impressions were on reading Brooklyn. Hello, I'm extremely glad to be the Reader of the Month. I cannot say it enough, I absolutely adored this book. It was an absolute page-turner. During the first 3 days of the holidays, I just couldn't stop myself. I was reading all the time. Now, there are loads of reasons why I absolutely love this book. Here they are. I was really able to identify with the main characters, Ailish in particular. Rose, I saw a bit of myself in everybody, a bit of my determination, of my love for travelling, I want to make a difference in the world, so it was really brilliant. It was also really fun to read. Colm Tobin manages to add in lots of humour, and I really like that, which means that even if it's a hard moment, you'll still manage to laugh because Colm Tobin is really gifted for that very subtle humour. It's also, of course, extremely poignant. He's talking about very sad things, and just the idea that Ailish is all alone in Brooklyn and her sister Rose has just died is heartbreaking. For me, there's no good book without a good dilemma, a good choice to make, and which makes you also part of the book, involved. You feel like you want to say your word, you want to give your own opinion, and that also forces you to go on YouTube, go on the internet, and go and see whether there's some new things to discover about the book. And that's really what pushed me, because I was absolutely terrified that Ailish might make the wrong choice and might get all her life messed up. Of course, it's a book, so it finished well. I was also able to discover lots of places I didn't know, for example, Ireland, New York, Brooklyn, and Colm Tobin also has a quality of describing the energy of places, or, at the contrary, for Ireland, the stillness and the beauty. So I loved that. I'd never been to Ireland, I've never been to Brooklyn, so that was wonderful. It was inspirational. At the end of the book, I always like to feel inspired, and I definitely did feel inspired. And then it really made me feel that life is a succession of decisions that you have to make. You can't go round them or not make them, and the ticket in life is just making the right decisions. And if you make these right decisions, then you can really do something about your life. And Ailish has 5 of the most important decisions in her life in one big decision: stay in Ireland or go back to New York. Just to finish with, I'd like to say that I went to go and see the film afterwards with my godmother, and I absolutely loved the film. It was also amazing. The actors were brilliant. They really managed to convey what I felt in the book. So I can only recommend one thing, and that is that you go and read this book. Thank you very much, Francesca Aloisi. Well, that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed our presentation of the Book of the Month. I've definitely loved making it, and see you next month for the next book. It'll be as brilliant, as amazing, and as interesting as Brooklyn.